The phone rang at exactly 2:13 in the morning. Detective Elias Kane almost ignored it. Rain hammered the windows of the nearly empty police station while thunder rolled across the small town of Black Hollow. Most officers had already gone home hours earlier. Elias sat alone at his desk surrounded by cold coffee cups, unfinished paperwork, and a headache that had lasted 3 days. The phone kept ringing. Slowly, he answered. Black Hollow Police Department. Several seconds, nothing. Then breathing, weak. Terrified breathing, a woman finally whispered, "He buried them." Elias straightened immediately. "Ma'am, who buried who?" The woman sounded like she was crying. "He's going to do it again." Static crackled violently through the line. Elias grabbed a pen quickly. "What's your name?" Silence. Then the woman whispered 3 words that made Elias freeze completely. "Under the farmhouse." The call disconnected. Dead silence filled the station. Elias immediately traced the number. 30 seconds later, the result appeared on his screen. And every hair on his arm stood up. The number belonged to a woman named Clara Whitmore, a woman officially declared dead 8 years earlier. By sunrise, Elias sat alone inside the station archives staring at Clara Whitmore's old case file. The photograph showed a young white American woman in her late 20s with shoulder-length brown hair and soft blue eyes, missing, declared dead after 6 months. No body recovered. The case had gone cold years ago, but something bothered Elias immediately. The details felt wrong, too clean, too quickly closed. According to reports, Clara disappeared after leaving her waitress job one rainy evening. Her abandoned car was later found near the woods outside town. No signs of struggle, no witnesses, nothing. Yet somehow the town accepted her disappearance surprisingly fast. Elias flipped through more pages carefully. Then he noticed a familiar name, Sheriff Daniel Mercer, the former sheriff who handled the original investigation. A man now retired. A man known for protecting powerful families in Black Hollow. Elias leaned back slowly. Black Hollow looked peaceful from the outside, quiet streets, old diners, church bells every Sunday morning. But underneath that calm surface lived something darker. The Whitmore case wasn't the only disappearance. Over the past 12 years, 6 women had vanished around Black Hollow. Most were dismissed as runaways, drifters, addicts. Women nobody powerful cared enough to search for, but Elias cared. Because unlike most detectives in town, Elias Kane remembered what it felt like when people stopped looking. His younger sister disappeared 15 years earlier in another state. The case was never solved. That pain followed him into every investigation, which was why the call terrified him, because whoever whispered through that phone sounded very alive. By evening, Elias drove deep into the northern woods beyond Black Hollow. Rain clouds gathered overhead while dirt roads twisted endlessly through dead trees. Eventually he saw it, the farmhouse, old, rotting, abandoned, at least that's what everyone claimed. The property once belonged to the Grayson family, one of the wealthiest families in town before their business empire collapsed years earlier. Now the farmhouse sat forgotten beneath thick overgrown vines and rusted fencing. Elias stepped from his car slowly. The air felt wrong, too quiet. No birds, no insects, nothing. His flashlight cut through darkness as he approached the porch. The wooden floor creaked beneath his boots. Inside, dust covered nearly everything. Broken furniture, mold-covered walls, water dripping from the ceiling. But then Elias noticed something strange, fresh mud. Someone had been inside recently. He followed the muddy footprints carefully through the hallway, toward the basement door locked. Elias drew his weapon slowly. His pulse pounded loudly now. He broke the lock with one hard kick. The basement smelled damp and rotten. Flashlight beams revealed shelves, broken tools, and old farming equipment. Then Elias saw disturbed dirt. A large section of the basement floor had clearly been dug up recently. His stomach tightened. Slowly, Elias grabbed a shovel leaning nearby and began digging. 10 minutes later, the shovel struck something soft. Elias froze, then carefully brushed dirt aside. A human hand emerged from the ground. The body belonged to a young woman, white female, mid-20s, recently buried. Elias immediately called backup. By midnight, the farmhouse became a full crime scene. Flashing police lights illuminated the woods while forensic teams dug deeper into the basement floor. And then they found another body. Then another. 3 bodies buried beneath the farmhouse. All women, all murdered. Elias stood outside in the rain feeling sick. This wasn't a coincidence anymore, this was a serial killer. And somehow, the killings had remained hidden for years. Deputy Nora Bennett approached him quietly, 32 years old, sharp-minded. One of the few officers Elias trusted completely. "You okay?" she asked softly. Elias stared toward the farmhouse. The caller knew exactly where they were. Nora nodded slowly. "Whoever called you wanted these bodies found." Looked back toward the flashing crime scene lights. Or they wanted us looking in the wrong direction. That possibility frightened him even more. Because if someone manipulated the investigation, then the killer might already know police were closing in. And serial killers rarely stop quietly. The next morning, Elias investigated the Grayson family. Old money, political influence, real estate, construction contracts. The kind of family capable of making problems disappear, especially in a town like Black Hollow. At the center of it all stood Richard Grayson, 65 years old, cold-eyed, respected publicly, feared privately. Years earlier, rumors connected him to corruption, illegal land deals, and intimidation. But nobody ever proved anything. Elias visited Grayson Holdings pretending to ask routine questions. The company headquarters overlooked the town from a massive hilltop estate. Luxury cars lined the driveway, security cameras everywhere. Richard Grayson greeted Elias personally. "Detective Kane," he said smoothly. "To what do I owe the pleasure?" Elias studied him carefully. The older man remained unnervingly calm after learning bodies were found on his former property. "That farmhouse belonged to your family." "Ago," Richard replied casually. "You never visited it?" "No." "Rented it?" "No." Everything about him felt rehearsed, controlled. Then Elias noticed something unusual, a framed photograph behind Richard's desk. In the photo stood Richard beside former Sheriff Daniel Mercer, smiling together, friends. Elias suddenly understood why the original disappearances vanished so easily. Power protects power, especially in small towns. As Elias prepared to leave, Richard spoke again. "Careful where you dig, detective." Elias stopped. Richard smiled faintly. "Some graves are buried for a reason." That night, Elias visited retired Sheriff Daniel Mercer. The old man lived alone near the lake outside town, fishing boat. Wooden cabin, peaceful surroundings hiding ugly history. Mercer opened the door slowly. "You're digging up ghosts," he muttered immediately. Elias stepped inside. "You closed Clara Whitmore's case too quickly." Mercer poured whiskey silently. "She was gone. You didn't even search the farmhouse." Mercer avoided eye contact. "That was enough." "You knew something," Elias said quietly. The old sheriff's hands trembled slightly. For several moments he said nothing. Then finally, "I tried." Elias frowned. "What does that mean?" Mercer sat heavily into his chair. 8 years ago I received anonymous letters about women disappearing." "Why didn't you investigate properly?" Mercer laughed bitterly. "You think small-town sheriffs control anything?" He looked directly at Elias. The Graysons' own judges, politicians, deputies, half the town. Felt anger rise. "You gave up?" "No," Mercer whispered. "I got scared." Filled the cabin. Then Mercer said something chilling. "The killer wasn't working alone." Stared at him. "What are you talking about?" Mercer leaned closer. "The women weren't random." "Then what were they?" Mercer's voice dropped almost to a whisper. "They all knew something." Elias could ask another question. The cabin lights suddenly went out. Darkness swallowed the room. Then gunshots exploded outside. The woman who wasn't dead. Bullets shattered the cabin windows. Elias pulled Mercer to the floor immediately. Glass exploded across the room while headlights illuminated the lake outside. Someone was trying to kill them. Elias returned fire toward the trees. The shooter disappeared into darkness moments later. By the time backup arrived, the attacker was gone, but Mercer was terrified now. "They know I talked," he whispered. Shook his head desperately. "I should have spoken years ago." Drove Mercer back to the station for protection. Halfway there, Elias' phone rang again. "Unknown number," he answered carefully. The same woman whispered, "You're running out of time." Nearly swerved off the road. "They're watching you. Are you Clara?" Silence, then softly, "I never left Black Hollow." The call disconnected again. Elias stared ahead in shock. If Clara Whitmore was alive, then somebody faked her death. And if somebody faked her death, then everything about the case was bigger than murder. It was conspiracy. The room beneath the church. Elias finally discovered the connection while reviewing old property records. Every missing woman once worked for businesses connected to Grayson Holdings, including Clara Whitmore, but one location appeared repeatedly in hidden documents sent. Matthew's Church, the oldest church in Black Hollow. Elias and Nora searched the church late that night. The priest denied knowing anything, but Elias noticed fresh scratches beneath the altar floor. Hidden stairs leading downward. The underground room beneath the church looked nothing like a basement. Computers, filing cabinets, hidden surveillance equipment, thousands of documents, blackmail files, photographs, financial records, and dozens of pictures of missing women. This entire town was being controlled. Opened another file carefully. Inside sat photographs of politicians, judges, businessmen, all connected to crimes covered up by the Graysons. The disappearances weren't random. The women had discovered the operation and they were silenced. Then Elias heard movement behind them. Richard Grayson stood in the doorway holding a gun. "You should have stopped digging," he said calmly. Nora slowly reached for her weapon. Richard aimed directly at Elias. "You really think exposing this changes anything?" Richard asked. Elias stepped forward carefully. "You killed those women." Richard smiled coldly. No, that answer surprised Elias. "Then who did?" Richard's expression darkened. "My son." Elias froze. Richard continued quietly. "He enjoyed hurting people long before I realized how dangerous he truly was." Richard said nothing. Then suddenly, a voice answered from the darkness behind them. "Right here." A younger man stepped into the room holding Clara Whitmore at gunpoint, alive, thin, terrified, but alive. Elias felt shock ripple through him. The younger man smiled strangely. "They should have stopped looking." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "He kept us hidden underground," she whispered. There were more survivors. The younger man tightened his grip violently. "I gave them purpose." Slowly raised his hands. "Let her go." Man laughed. "She called you, did she?" Clara whispered shakily. "I stole a phone." Finally connected, she'd been hidden for years beneath Black Hollow, alive the entire time. The killer suddenly aimed the gun toward Clara's head. Elias reacted instantly. Gunshots exploded through the underground chamber. Chaos consumed the hidden room. Nora fired first. The killer staggered backward. Richard Grayson lunged toward his son desperately. Another gunshot echoed, then silence. The killer collapsed onto the floor dead. Richard slowly dropped beside him in shock. Tears filled the old man's eyes. "He was my son." Police flooded the church minutes later. What investigators uncovered beneath Black Hollow shocked the entire country. Hidden rooms, secret tunnels, blackmail operations, evidence buried for decades, and 3 surviving women rescued from underground captivity, including Clara Whitmore. The town became national news overnight. Judges resigned, officers arrested, politicians exposed. Everything Black Hollow tried hiding finally surfaced. Weeks later, Elias visited Clara at a recovery center outside town. She looked healthier now, still fragile but alive. "You kept searching," she whispered softly. Elias nodded. "Most people stopped believing, stared quietly out the window. That's how monsters survive." Understood those words deeply. Because evil rarely hides in darkness alone. Sometimes it hides behind wealth, churches, families, respectability, and entire towns willing to stay silent. As Elias left the recovery center, rain began falling softly outside. The same kind of rain from the night the phone rang at 2:13 a.m. But this time, the dead woman's voice no longer haunted him, because now the truth had finally been buried properly.